Hi, I'm just very quickly going to introduce what this book club is about, and then Sara's going to take over. She's our wonderful guest host this evening. So this book club is something we've done in the past when we could all meet in real life, and the idea really is to share a book that you're passionate about and tell other people why you love it and why they should read it. So this is our first one online, and I'm going to pass over to Sara, our host, because she'll tell you more. But we're really pleased to have Sara with us and look forward to hers and everybody else's recommendation too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordana. And thank you for joining for Grows If You Only Had One Book Club. I love this concept. It's new to me. I guess it's new to all of us. I'm very excited. As Jordana said, I'm just going to repeat very quickly. So this is part of Grow's home series. And yeah, it's a way for us to stay connected with each other whilst everything is closed, and especially our beloved Grow venue. So obviously, hopefully we can go there again when everything reopens closer to spring. And I really want to thank again Grow for allowing me to talk about my favorite subject, feminism. And with that comes with my favorite author as well, which is Audrey Lorde. And a little bit about myself: I am a poet, a writer, and a founder of Women of the Week podcast, poetry, performance, and community space. You can find us online at Women of the Week. And yeah, when I started Women of the Week 2 years ago, this was thanks to our chats with Jordana, actually, and it really stemmed from the idea that I wanted to highlight, amplify, elevate the many different beautiful stories that we have in Hacking Wick in our community. I just want to say in the beginning that I want to dedicate today's session to Catherine, our really beloved friend, artist, who passed away. This is dedicated to Catherine Miles Griffiths, whose work, whose feminist fierce voice and beautiful work will live on. So this is a dedication to Catherine. And having said all that, so the book that I chose today to talk about is Your Silence Will Not Protect You by Audrey Lorde. It is a book that I've carried with me. You can see it's quite worn out, if you can say that of a book. I have another version of the book, which is a bit smaller. I think you can buy these for £2. So if you don't want to invest in the bigger version of the book, you can find the collection of essays also. I mean, almost in any modern bookshop they sell these short versions as well. And the reason why this hit me like 1,000 bricks when I saw this at a bookstore on Dalston Kingsland on Kingston Road now I think over 3 years ago was the essay "Poetry is not a luxury, it is a necessity." And for me, as an aspiring poet, that was something that gave a confidence for me to keep writing, confidence to use my voice, confidence to allow myself to say what I wanted to say out loud, and that my voice actually matters. Now, I'm not drawing any comparisons between myself and Audrey Lorde, feminist, lesbian, Black poet, as she self-claims herself, or used to. She is no longer with us. But at the same time, in this fierceness, in this intersectional feminism, in this voice that she writes, I find it extremely inclusive and something that I think is extremely timely. If you follow any feminist Instagram accounts, you probably have come across a couple of her quotes or also in any of the titles of this book, of the uses of the erotic or the poetry is not a luxury. What else? I mean, there are many, and there are many quotes as well that I could read. And if we have any time, we could also perhaps go back to those. It talks about racism in a way that I think, especially today in the conversation since the BLM movement, have become so valid and quoted thousands and thousands of times. But without further ado, I feel like I'm talking quite a lot. I would also love to know which books you have chosen, and also if you could give short introductions to to your books and introduce yourself. I have a habit of also encouraging people to tell their gender pronouns if that feels comfortable. For example, I am Sara, she, her. If it feels comfortable to you, please do the same as well. And Jordana is the next to me, so I'm going to start with her. If you have a book ready, Jordana, would you care to share it with us?
Okay. Hi, I'm Jordana, she, her, and I am one of the founders of Grow, which is running this one series of events. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm really, really chuffed that we can translate this to an online event as well, because personally, when I found doing them, it's a really nice way to meet new people, and who doesn't want a book from a personal recommendation rather than kind of a list of bestsellers, really. So I'm looking forward to hearing other people's as well as having some further questions for Sarah. So feminism is an area that I am interested in, and in my art it definitely comes through, but I've never kind of focused on it. I've always sort of struggled with the concept a bit. And I actually don't have a book really on feminism in my bookshelf, and this is why I'm great to be here, because I can get some recommendations to where to start. And I know I've worked with Sarah in the past, and she's made some recommendations which, if COVID hadn't hit, probably we would be working together more. But I thought, well, I better find something, and I did find this, and I welcome people's thoughts on this. And it's a well-known book. And it's The Power, obviously going backwards. And Naomi Alderman wrote this book. And I read it a couple of years ago, and I've had, like everybody, 2020 has been quite a challenging year. So I've kind of forgotten a lot of it, but I do remember it being really engaging. And the book has to be really engaging for me to kind of stick with it, because my mind's full. So it really takes something good to get me to the end of books. I've got hundreds of books that I've started and haven't finished. So it's really engaging. And I guess that'd be my first point. It was nice to have a fiction book about questions of feminism, because it's, for me, a lot easier to read fiction because of the story, perhaps, than kind of an academic book. So that's the first reason why I'd recommend it. And in fact, actually, I've been looking at it and thinking I must send it my sister. So I might have to send it to my sister, because it's one thing I can send through the post during COVID, because I think it's sort of for me, it was an introduction to kind of the questions of feminism. And it is something I don't fully understand as a concept, as a theme. So I'd like to learn more about it. And I'm happy to discuss this book. I can't remember the ins and outs of it without flicking it through, but if anybody else read it, I wouldn't mind being reminded about what they liked about it as well. But I'll leave it there for now.
Can I just quickly ask, so is that non-fictional?
Yes, so it's it's fictional, and it's completely made up. But it won Women's Prize for Fiction 2017. But yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I can't remember too much about it. They are actually making a film about it, I think, at the moment, which got stopped for COVID, which has been really good. But it questions, what if women had all the power? And what happens when you have all the power? And, it's a question of power as much as, well, it's called The Power, so it's obviously a question about power, but it sort of questions how power dynamics sort of change. And I guess for my artwork, I'm very interested in power. So that's where the feminism sort of theme piques my interest. But I really would like to know and understand feminism a lot more, because I feel like I don't understand the theory and I'm a little uncomfortable with it. But at 40, I feel like I should be a bit better at that. So I hope some recommendations can help me pick that theme up.
I have a couple of questions for you immediately. Am I breaking the routine of the event if I'm shooting questions back at you? No, I was just wondering more about the book. So does it talk about power in a kind of political sense, or giving power to women? How does it like manifest the power in the book?
It's, again, I did read it 2 years ago, and I apologise, my memory is awful. I'd have to reread it again to feel like I was giving you an accurate answer. But yeah, there's just a shift in power politically. And there's a catastrophic event, I think, that shifts power. And I don't want to give too much away, but perhaps that's the idea of book club. I don't know, but it really does sort of talk about how, once you've got power, how it brings out the good and the bad in all people or all society. But also, perhaps if women did have the power, what things would be vastly improved about society as well. So it sort of is. I felt it's quite an honest, controversial kind of take on things, which is why I guess it kind of kept me gripped, really, because I don't think there's a panacea to society, and everything's complex. So I did find that gripped me.
I guess that's just interests me as well, because it seems so timely. I mean, I'm from Finland, and you may know that Finland has the only coalition government formed by women, and we've had a female president already. I mean, this is probably 20 years ago. And I mean, now during COVID, not to go too deep into the details, but I mean, we've seen the countries where situations have been handled so well, like in New Zealand or in the northern countries, and they all have female leaders. So that's something in common. Anyway, shall we continue, and then we can go back to the questions and kind of also have an open conversation. So I think Sara is next to on my screen, if you would care to share your book of choice.
Yeah, for sure. Hi. So I'm Sara with an H, she, her. And I first of all, the Power book that Jordana recommended, I didn't want to get up and get it, but I have it, but I haven't read it yet. But I got it because of I read something about women being able to sort of emit like electricity from their hands or fingers, and they get power. And so I was really interested, and I'm excited to read it now after your recommendation. And my book is perhaps, hopefully, perfect for Jordana if you want to get into feminism. I love it so much. So it's Feminist Theory from Margin to Center by Bell Hooks. And you can see that I made a lot of notes, and there's a lot of Post-its in there. I'm doing my PhD in feminist television studies. And I'm often and most of the time writing about exactly the women, those sort of white privileged women that kind of take up a lot of feminism. But it's nice because it's really shifting now to this more intersectional perspective, where we really consider gender and race and class in all of these discussions about feminism, and where it's becoming more political again. So we've for sure seen that. And if you want to read, if I could just read one book and take one book as like basically a to-do list for the rest of my life, it would for sure be this. It was first published in 1984. And my edition is from 2015, and it's nice because it has a new preface written by Bell Hooks in 2015, I guess, or maybe 2014. And so that's kind of, also showing how very, relevant it still is. and it touches upon, you know, a lot of discussions about how, you know, men can be our allies in the struggle for feminism, and how she actually has a chapter on revolutionary parenting, which I find super interesting, in terms of how, you know, childcare is still something very feminized, and you know, and so it's got basically everything you need for your feminist to-do list.
I am so glad that you brought that up. I have read some essays or books from Bell Hooks, especially on mourning, and yearning, and this kind of belonging and longing. So that is definitely going onto my to read list, definitely. That's excellent. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Sarah.
Thank you, and Audrey Lorde, awesome.
Great. Chloe.
Sorry, I couldn't get you off mute.
That's all right.
I'm Chloe, and I am she, her, and I don't have a copy of the book, but I do have a photo of it. And I don't know if you can see that it's The Power of Women by June Sarpon. And I chose that book. I've read quite a few books recently about women and the role of women. And the reason I chose June Sarpon's was because she writes from a very inclusive place. She has a really vibrant voice. And some of the books I've read, I feel as if they're very obviously written by a woman for a woman, which I think is really important. But I think the minute you do that, you ostracize a very large group of people that, if you include them, you could have as allies. And one thing that June Sarpon does really well is she talks about the role of men as allies, the role of how feminism benefits everybody, which is really interesting. She's writing from a very modern perspective, so her arguments and her thoughts felt very recent and fresh. She covers intersectionality, she covers race, she covers class, and she doesn't go too deeply into the role of poverty within feminism, but she does touch upon it. Her writing is really crisp, which I like, and it's not, she references a lot of other really wonderful women. So there's the option when you're reading it to make notes and then think, oh, I'd like to look at that, or oh, that sounds like a really interesting book. But she doesn't overwhelm you with facts. It feels as if you're reading something that is personal and interesting. And yeah, it's a really good, strong starting point as a woman, I felt.
I love how these books are kind of tying up together power.
Yeah, I thought that.
There are definitely strong links. When was your book published, Chloe?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was 2017. Let me check.
What was
I read it last year, but I'm not sure.
It was The Power of Women, I think, was it?
Yes, Power of Women. I'm just Googling. Google is my friend. Doesn't say.
No, that's okay, but it's like quite recent.
Yeah, it is very recent. She's written another book called Diversify, which was also quite a lot about feminism, but it was much more about Black lives as well. But she seems to be, I don't think she's hugely popular, which is a shame because she has a really strong voice and she writes really well. So it's a shame that I haven't seen much of her writing in shops on the kind of feminist bookshelves, which is a shame, like I say, because her writing is really fresh and very engaging and very accessible. and very inclusive, which I think is important.
It is extremely important. How did you come across the book?
I'm really fortunate. Our library has, every month they have a whole section committed to a particular theme. And so last year I was in there, and it was during March for International Women's Day. And it was one of the books on the shelf. And I grew up with June Sarpon on Channel 4. So she was somebody I knew as like a TV personality. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I picked it up, read the back, and thought, that sounds really good. And yeah, from there, read it, really enjoyed it. And it was published in 2018. So it is quite new.
Great. I mean, there's been such a massive boom of feminist literature in the last 5 years' time, especially. So like, I feel like a lot of probably great authors and books are also getting lost in the midst of the, and there are some that constantly keep on coming back. What is the one? I haven't read that one, but it's the Women Don't Owe You Petty. Is it that one? I feel like that is always on top of all the lists, and whenever I go to Waterstones, or it's I think there is like a heavy promotion on that one especially, and I'm sure like there are millions of other, not to say that this is not a great book, but I think there are just so many fantastic authors and Black authors, and yeah, especially I think we should be reading more. Sadie, would you like to go ahead? Do you have a book you would like to share with us, or recommendation?
Yes, I'm sorry, I got my connection dropped, and so I missed half of your discussion about your book. I'm so sorry about that. I tried to rejoin the meeting, but I think I was just too late. So I'm keeping my camera turned off, because I think it just doesn't like Zoom. I'm sorry about that. I'll try and but I can quickly turn it on just to show you the front cover of the book. Maybe that's a good idea. just quickly. Yeah, it's called Zeros and Ones, and it's by Sadie Plant. It was published in 1998 by Fourth Estate Books, and it's about women in digital technology. And it's kind of, in some ways, it's sort of dated, because it was published in 1998 and everything has sort of changed, I guess. But it's about women in digital culture. I'm going to turn my video off just in case I get disconnected. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine, yeah.
Yep.
Crystal clear.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. All right, sorry. Ironically, yeah, I've been disconnected just as I'm talking about women in digital culture. And when I first read it, I found it just to be, sorry. What I really liked about it was the way it sort of mimics the kind of associative thinking that you get within digital culture. And it also plots the parallels between women's emancipation and the kind of development of sophisticated digital technologies. And for me, the most sort of striking thing about it was how it kind of uncovered a sort of hidden history about a woman called Ada Lovelace, who, you probably all know this, but she was the daughter of Lord Byron and also the first computer programmer. So the first computer programmer was a woman, and it was in the 1800s. And along with Charles Babbage, they developed something called the difference engine that was based on the technology used in the Jacquard loom. So essentially, what I thought was intriguing about it was the idea that computer technology comes from spinning, from weaving and textiles. Are you still there?
Yes, we're still here. Yeah. Can you hear us? Sadie? We're just I think we were able to hear you perfectly fine, and yeah, sounds very interesting. So keep going if you can hear us. Nope, we might have lost her. Jordana?
Oh, sorry, I just thought it was very interesting what she was telling us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like she might have dropped off, so that might be something to do with her Wi-Fi. Everybody else can hear each other okay, is that right? Yeah. What she'll hopefully do is come back, and David will let her in. But thankfully she'll be able to re-watch what she's missed, and she'll know that she did get her recommendation across just in time.
Exactly, yeah. But that does sound super interesting. I'm actually very glad. First, I thought when I saw the cover, I thought that might be a book about ecofeminism, which is also another topic that is quite popular, and I guess all of these are intervening together, as already Chloe, did you say, this kind of intersectional feminism that of course expands over all different aspects of our lives, as it should, look at things through a feminist lens and a perspective, through gender equality, and as well as class, race, as also Sarah mentioned. Jordana, did you say that you had some questions you would like to talk about, or like some topics? Yeah, just to bring up. I mean, we could all have a chat. If also any one of you have any questions, or topics you would like to bring up.
I'd definitely like to hear more about your passion for that book, but I also had a quick question for Sarah about the book she chose, which is really good that you referenced me as the intro and the kind of the must-have book. I was just interested if you could tell me a bit more about it was published in 1984, and then it had the preface in 2015. How does the content does it feel a bit sort of, I'm sure you wouldn't be recommending it if you felt it was dated, but I'm just interested to hear a bit more about the age of the book.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting to read the preface to the first, because the preface of the first edition is still in there. And she kind of just, in the new preface, she kind of updates everything a little bit. And she kind of, she repeats a couple of things that she's kind of already saying in the original version, which one of them is about what feminist struggle is and what feminist movement is. So kind of a feminist struggle happening anytime anyone, regardless of gender, kind of resists sexism and sexist exploitation and oppression. And then she says that, of course, feminist movement is the same, but in a more organized way. And yeah, it's funny because she has, so the chapters, some of the titles are, so she talks about Black women and the significance of the feminist movement, which is really interesting because since the original was published in the 80s and written actually 10 years before it got published, so she was writing most of that stuff in the 70s. Yeah, and when you're reading it, you always feel like she just wrote this now. So each chapter feels exactly like she's been writing it the past few years, especially because she also writes about power as well. So that chapter will interest you the most, maybe. And of course, these days, no matter what I'm reading, it's always kind of, capitalism is kind of the root of all evil. So, and it's really true. There's so much capitalist critique in this book, in the 80s already. And in the chapter about the revolutionary parenting, she's writing about the fact that women should really get together and demand that the government, she's writing about the US, so because she's from Kentucky, and she's writing about the fact that women should get together and kind of, make the government spend money not on the military, which of course in the 80s was especially bad, although it's not much better now. So this is also how it relates to everything today, to sort of allocate money that is spent on military and on stuff like that, and spend it, for example, on childcare for everybody. So that, you know, everyone can, at least so that we can reach a point where everyone actually has the same chances to you know, have a fulfilling job or profession or whatever. And yeah, so she talks a lot about class, of course, in that context, because a lot of people are already in the position that they can afford childcare, for example. So for a lot of people, I mean, I don't have kids, and I think that's not happening because I have so much other stuff to do. No, I'm just kidding. But so yeah, so that's like a really individual choice for everybody. But a lot of people, they want kids and they want to have a job, or they have kids and they need to have a job because otherwise they can't afford, you know, life for themselves and their kids. So the stuff about parenting and childcare is so interesting. And since 1984, when this came out, not a lot has changed in that respect. There's definitely been some progress to more accessible childcare, but again, for sure, for the wealthier people, you know, who've been advocating for more childcare, like in their workplaces or whatever. And now with the pandemic, I don't even know where we stand on that. But yeah, so that's one of the things that is so recent, I think. So when you're reading the book, I think you also will feel like this could have been written just, you know, this year.
There is another book, if I can jump in and recommend something now, called Invisible Women, and it talks about the data of, you might have read it, I can see nodding, yeah, of invisible labor of women. And it was something that I picked up, I think, anyway, it was last year, and it just again kind of reassured me what I already felt and knew in ways. And I don't have children myself either, but to even imagine what it might take for someone who is already in a precarious situation or job. There is an example of someone working, I think, in Santiago in the United States in Starbucks, and you only get to know your shifts like 2 days beforehand, and you might need to, you know, finish 12 at night and start 5 a.m. the next morning, and then the same one. You don't have any time to take care of childcare and to. So anyway, there is just a lot of course, invisible labor that goes into our relationships of domestic work that we just kind of inherit. And yeah, this role of a carer that we often embody as women naturally, because it is taught to us since we were kids, as young girls. So yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. Super interesting. Yeah. Any other comments or questions or anything at this point?
Just have one more quick comment for Chloe, and then again, I'm sure the people got questions, but I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more about your book. So I'm really pleased that you brought June Sarpon into the chat, because probably, like, well, you mentioned you sort of grew up with her, and she's always a very sort of you know, bubbly and charming character, and I definitely picked that up because I really liked her. I liked watching her, and I found her very engaging. And I knew that she was involved in diversity, and she had her voice in that area, but I didn't know she wrote on feminism. So I'm going to definitely look that up. And just I think someone mentioned TV earlier, or might have been something to do with feminism TV. Just to say, we have a couple of panel discussions on Black Lives Matters, being Black in entertainment, with some really interesting sort of female people working in the entertainment industry. I just wanted to reference that, if that will be on the Grow at Home page, which I think is really interesting to watch. It's not got a female perspective, but there is a female perspective as part of the panel discussion. So I just wanted to sort of drop that in. But yeah, otherwise, when everyone else finished their questions, I'd love to hear a little bit more of your passion for your book, Sara, because you gave us all lots of time and gave yourself a short time so far. So I'd like to hear more if you can. But thank you. That's my questions.
Did you have anything to add to that, Chloe?
I was just going to say that, sorry, talking about invisible women, I am a mother, and I think it's a really important thing to raise, because I think as much as this current pandemic has taught us about feminism, and I really like that we're able to have these conversations, I think being a mother, something I've realized, not just through my reading about feminism, is I am invisible, and it's a very difficult thing to balance, being a strong woman with strong feelings and views, and also being someone that has to nurture and educate the next generation. I have 4 children, 2 daughters, 1 son, and 1 who is non-binary. So I feel this big responsibility to bring all my learning and intelligence to their lives. And the pandemic has made me realize that, like that, I'm expected to just stop what I'm doing and step into the role of a teacher, but there's no obvious reward for that. The government don't really care about me as a woman or as a mother. It's just, okay, your kids are home now, get on with a job that you're not qualified to do. We're not going to support you in that, but you are going to step into that role. And so it's really highlighted for me the pressures that women face day in and day out, and how very often we do just step into these roles without thinking about it. Mothers do it, people without children do it. We fill the gaps, and that's something that I've really noticed in the variety of books I've read. There's this constant feeling that women just have to fill the gaps, and if we don't, then we're ostracized or we're demonized. But when we do, there's no thanks or gratitude. It's not acknowledged in any way. It's just, as you said, Sarah, it's somehow expected of us. And I'm not, as much as I've read, no one's ever really answered that question of how that comes to be, how we become indoctrinated into this idea that we just have to step up and do it. So I just wanted to follow on from that chat, because I think it's really pertinent at the moment.
Thank you for saying that. And I think it does also, well, I'm really glad again for Grow hosting these type of spaces, and having us to come together and to also hear the different views. I mean, we are quite locked in at the moment in our homes and houses, and who have the voice to say their opinions, voice their concerns also in media. I mean, it is not all of us. So yeah, extremely important to hear the other and just, I don't know, like, what we are expected to do and be, like superhumans changing all the different hats. So anyway, just a lot of strength and love. That probably does not mean much in this space, but still. I would love to maybe share some words from Audrey Lorde, if you don't mind, and also if you have any quotes or a quote that you would like to share from your book in the last 15 minutes or so. I would love to hear straight from the book pages. I'm just going to start this by reading first a quote from Bell Hooks on Audrey Lorde, as I just feel it is quite fitting. So it's in this book. With the constant demand Lorde makes in her work that silences be broken, that we claim our power to make ourselves visible, We have both a theory that conceptualizes our power to set ourselves and our words free. The Lord challenges us to not be trapped by fear. Okay. I should have I'm in a room that doesn't have that much light as I normally have, and I think I highlighted everything in yellow, so I can't really find the but anyway, I feel like wherever I pick the book, you know, it will be good. I guess I could just literally take any here. Okay, it is towards the end, and it is from my favorite essay. Well, one of the many. Poetry is not a luxury. If what we need to dream to move our spirits most deeply and directly towards and through promise is discounted as a luxury, then we give up the core, the fountain of our power, our womanness. We give up the future of our worlds. For there are no new ideas. There are only new ways of making them felt, of examining what those ideas feel like being lived on Sunday morning at 7 a.m, after brunch, during wild love, making war, giving birth, mourning our dead, while we suffer the old longings, battle the old warnings and fears of being silent and impotent and alone, while we taste new possibilities and strengths. It's so strong. It's so strong. Wow. Okay. Are there any lines that you would like to share from your books, or favorite quotes from the same author? I don't know if Jordana wants to go ahead, or whoever. Sarah, you're
I unmuted myself.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So what I really wanted to do also is make another recommendation, because, yeah, and thank you for I'm gonna buy all of the things that everyone has mentioned, or finally read them, just to get that out there. It's amazing. And in case you have like a half an hour at some point for a podcast episode, there's so many. There's a really good one that's also about this invisibility of women who are mothers, and with the pandemic, it just came out like a week or 2 weeks ago. The podcast is called Public Intellectual. It's hosted by Jessa Crispin, who's also written a lot about feminism, and I don't know her that well, and this is the only episode of that podcast that I have listened to, and it's called "Did the Pandemic Erase the Progress of Feminism?" And her guest is Angela McRobbie, who actually was born in the UK just 1 year before Bell Hooks, so they're contemporaries. And she has this book that came out. She has many books, and one of them came out last year, and especially so it's Feminism and the Politics of Resilience, and the subtitle is Essays on Gender, Media, and the End of Welfare. So that's a lot about the fact that in our society right now, there's always more dismantling of welfare happening. and kind of a poverty shaming going on in a lot of, I think, reality television, where poor people are basically kind of portrayed as being victims of their own choices. And so that's really interesting. And I thought, to just kind of throw something else in there. And because I honestly, I can't even, I also did, I have too many highlighted passages in there. So I'm gonna give the floor to the next person.
If there are any, if it comes naturally to you to read something, then please go ahead.
Well, I'm cheating because I just Googled quotes from The Power, which give me a list. So I can just pick one and read it out to you. You've been taught that you are unclean, that you're not holy, that your body is impure, and you could never harbour the divine. You have been taught to despise everything you are and long only to be a man, but you've been taught lies. So you can see it's kind of gets in depth there. And what I have realised, actually, just looking at the quotes and the kind of, I'm actually going to read it again. So unknown in book club before, I've actually realised that I need to reread the book I'm recommending. So that's I need to get to know it again. So that's great for me, as well as your books as well.
I actually had the same realization. Now, you have books that you love and you often reference, but at the same time, I haven't read the whole book, for ages, and I might quote the most famous quotes and hold them as my own. I even have a tattooed for Audrey. But yet, it's been actually quite some time. I did just recently read the small version of the short essays, The Master's Tool Will Never Dismantle the Master's House. But anyway, it's definitely time to go back to the original book as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jordana. It's so beautiful to hear other people to just read. I find that incredibly empowering. Chloe, is there anything you would like to share with us?
Sadly, I don't. I was just looking because I made some notes, but I don't think I made any notes from The Power of Women, which is a real shame because it would have been wonderful to share something with everybody. I'm just looking through some of the other things I've written. And one of the books, can I add another recommendation? Is that okay? Is a book by Cordelia Fine, which is called Testosterone Rex, which is a really interesting book because it completely throws apart the argument that men and women are biologically different. And because one of my children is non-binary, I've been trying to learn about what that means for them and kind of form arguments when people come with that, men and women are biologically different. So I read Testosterone Rex, and it was really, she's another writer who has written about lots of different things, always from a feminist perspective. But Testosterone Rex has a lot of, it's not an easy read because there's a lot of science in there, and I will admit that quite a bit of that was a little lost on me, but she writes so well that you get the point. And I've got a quote here that says, "These gender stereotypes operate through our life, both as expectations about the characteristics men and women have, and as gender norms dictating double standards for how women and men should behave, influencing people's interests, self-concept, performance, and beliefs about their capabilities in gender domains. These gender stereotypes and norms are also the foundation of both conscious and unconscious forms of sex discrimination, like biased evaluations of performance and potential, and social and economic backlash against people whose behavior isn't in line with them. And while the male and female reproductive systems have stayed the same across human history, as the developmental system has changed, whether through the introduction of contraception, equal opportunity legislation, paternity leave, or gender, quotes, brains, hormones, behaviors, and roles have all changed." So I just thought that's a really interesting one to throw in, because it ties in with the power, because that book, and I think I'm in the minority because I didn't enjoy it that much, but I really liked what she was trying to write. And Testosterone Rex reminded me of that, because this idea of women having the power doesn't seem so impossible when you realize that actually biologically we're perhaps not as different as we're constantly told that we are. So yeah, that's another book that I really recommend, because it will help you to perhaps challenge, even as a feminist, some ideas that we absorb. And so yeah, there we go.
Thank you so much. Oh, I feel like that is a topic that we could talk about the whole another hour. Maybe we should have another book club or a safe space discussion for that. I just have a couple of thoughts that immediately crossed my mind. I mean, one thing that obviously brings up is the gender pay gap. I was just recently looking at different statistics. I mean, even amongst freelancers, and I'm looking at statistics, especially in the creative industry, the gender pay gap exists, and I'm really interested in understanding more why. Why is it so that even when we decide and come to our clients and define the worth of our creative work, the gap still lies there, or vice versa, you know, there's only 11% of the creative directors are women. How come 50% of the architect graduates are women, and then only 20% end up working in architect firms? How is that possible? So, like, you know, I think that is something that, you know, we really need to break down, and with tools to empower ourselves, but also, you know, of course, that is on the higher level as well of that exist, the power structures. So to start, you know, perhaps having these conversations first of all of why is that. Another anecdote, if I can share just very quickly, I know we are reaching towards the end, but when I was a kid, I always had a short hair. Until very recently, it's the longest thanks to lockdown. My hair is this long, but I always I was mistaken as a boy when I was a kid. It didn't bother me at all, quite the contrary. But what really I still remember so vividly when people came to me and said, you know, when you grow up and when you become a strong man and the things that you can do, they talk to me very differently. They talk to me as I was, you know, someone capable and strong, and I could become an astronaut or I could become a magician, you know, honestly. And I was just always laughing. I was like, oh, you're just, you know, like I was just laughing always. Or, you know, even boys came to me and they talked to me as I was like one of their peers. And yeah, it just made me to realize, I guess, how different I was talked, depending on whether people thought that I was a boy or a girl. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, beautiful, beautiful words and books and knowledge and wisdom. And yeah, I wish we could have a massive group hug right now. And if there is anything else that you would like to share, the last minutes, I would love to hear any thoughts of the session or otherwise.
Just very quickly, I was trying to take notes of people's recommendations, but I failed, partly because I was trying to listen. If anyone has the time, and I know we're running a bit short, if they wouldn't mind just tapping in any of their recommendations into the chat, or emailing me. You had an email from me earlier if you haven't got time now, and I will share them as a sort of text on Grow Hackney Facebook, just so everyone can sort of see the links. So if you have time, that'd be great. If you don't, no worries. I have made some notes and I'll probably work them out, but that's my last point. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Jordana. I love the power. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if there is any official way that you oh yeah, I definitely want to read the Chloe's Testosterone Rex. That recommendation sounds really interesting. Any official way of closing the circles? If not, I guess maybe we can take a deep breath together. If that feels comfortable, place your feet on the ground, hands on your lap or hands on your heart, wherever it feels comfortable. I feel like today I need to have them on my chest because I just need a little bit of extra love. And take a deep breath in. You can close your eyes if it feels comfortable. Hold it on the top for a second and exhale. With that, I want to thank you so much for coming here, and I want to thank Grow for hosting this, giving us the space to join today, and thank you and good night.
Thank you, Sarah. Very nice to meet you, Sarah and Chloe. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again.
Yes, let's meet again.